everybody, and welcome to a Rage Quit review on the ECS Network. This is our very first one. It's an experiment, a work in progress, so we appreciate your patience and we appreciate your understanding as we continue to work out the kinks on our video production. But today, on our RQR, Rage Quit review, and I know what you're saying, you're thinking to yourself, but wait a minute, this is already what you do on Rage Quit Radio anyway. You review games, you play them, you talk about them, yada, yada, yada. Well, you're right, we do. But that is an hour-long podcast. This is a bite-sized review show, or at least much shorter, and in this case, it's only one person's opinion. In this instance, it's mine. And today we are talking about the DC Comics deck building game. I came to a realization as we were looking at doing this for an RQR radio episode, and the eventuality I came to was there are 4 base sets out for this game. There are 2 expansions for cooperative play. There are 4 mini expansions to add to the various base sets, and it's going to be a massive pain for me to separate out each an individual base set to then do a review on. So we're not going to. Instead, you're going to get this. Think of it as a trade paperback for the DC Comics deck building games. We're going to look at the 4 main base sets, pros and cons of each, and I'll walk you through a little bit of how to play the DC deck building game, in case you don't already know. So, sit back, relax, because we're going to take a look as the Justice League takes the stage in the original DC deck building set, when our heroes unite among the various and sundry Bat Universe characters and other Justice League supporting cast, when evil reigns in Forever Evil and the supervillains take over the scene, and when the Teen Titans go into action in the latest DC deck building base set. So folks, stick around. Our first Rage Quit review of the DC Comics deck building game is right now. We've got everything here to play the DC deck building game. This is one of my custom built main decks, so you're going to see things mix matched in here from all the different sets. Don't worry, folks. We're just going to show you real quick how to play the game. It's pretty simple. So in the DC deck building game, probably the first thing you're going to do is to select your superhero. Now, I apologize for the glare that you're going to see on screen. But your superhero, in this case, we are using Alan Scott. I have to show my love for the original Green Lantern. The hero card is oversized, and it will give you some special ability. For instance, with Alan Scott, and he's from one of the crossover sets, every time you play a different superpower during your turn, reveal the top card of your deck. If it costs 0, draw it. It was a theme that went through the Justice Society little mini expansion crossover. Now, once you've selected your hero, you will get your initial deck. In a deck building game, the idea is that you're going to build your deck as the game progresses. So each turn, you're going to buy new cards, which will in turn make your deck better the next time you get to go through it. So in the DC deck building game, your main deck starts with 10 cards. You will start with 7 punches. In addition to these 7 punches, you will start with 3 vulnerabilities. The 7 punches will each give you power, whereas the vulnerabilities will give you nothing. They are there for no reason other than to clog up your deck. So you're going to shuffle together your main deck, and I'm doing all this one-handed, so it's going to be pretty interesting to watch, folks. But you will shuffle together this deck, and this will be your starting deck for the game. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to determine what supervillains you will be fighting. The game of DC ends once all the supervillains are defeated. There will be an assortment of these jokers, and sometimes there are superheroes in this stack too, courtesy of the Forever Evil expansion. If you're playing just with Forever Evil, you'll be the bad guys versus nothing but heroes. This particular main deck that I've put together is themed around the Green Lanterns, so you'll see some interesting mix matches in here. But of the assortment of supervillains, and there are many if you do what we do a lot of times and just mix everything together, you're going to choose 7 of them. Now, these 7 should be picked at random and should be kept secret. Now, so what we're going to do here, just to make a slight bit of a mess. I'll just grab 7 here at random. So that's 5, 6, and 7. Okay, no need to look at the rest of those guys. So, we have 7 supervillains here. They're going to go face down to one side of what will eventually be the lineup. On top of this stack will be a starting villain. Now, each set, and there are 4 base sets, as you can see there from the instruction booklets, will add a new starting villain. In the original base set, that's going to be Raj Al Ghul. Then, depending on which set it is, will dictate from there on in. I believe it's Raj Al Ghul, Vandal Savage, The Flash, if you're playing Forever Evil, and I think it's Slade Wilson, Deathstroke for the Teen Titans. And each crossover expansion, or at least 3 out of the 4, also add new starting villains. For my DC Green Lantern deck, we use Solomon Grundy for that purpose. So, Solomon Grundy will sit atop the main deck. Also, off to the side, there are 2 additional stacks, weaknesses and kicks. Weaknesses are just like vulnerabilities, except that at the end of the game, they will cost you victory points. The idea is to, once all the supervillains have been defeated, be the player with the most VPs. Kicks are essentially your improved currency. Lots of deck building games have these. DC calls them kicks. They're almost always available. There's a stack of them sitting over here. Now, of course, if either of these stacks run out, they're done. They're not coming back for the rest of the game in normal play. Then we get the main deck. Now, this main deck is about the size of a main deck from one of the base sets, maybe add a crossover to it, one of the little mini expansions. Now, for the record, all these things are in Dragon Shield sleeves, so the actual main deck would be much smaller than that if you're not sleeving them, but you get the idea. So, your lineup, to go across here, will consist of 5 cards. There are several different types of cards that you will encounter as you play. There are heroes, there are villains, there are equipment, there are superpowers, there are locations. Equipment cards, sort of like the Lasso of Truth, as you see here, represent the different tools that heroes and villains might use. The villain cards are different bad guys that you're going to beat up and use to your own purposes later. Superpowers represent the different powers and abilities that our heroes have. And keep in mind that not all of these are thematically superpowers. Some of them are closer to just special abilities. For instance, Batman might have a card, and he does have a card, a superpower card, called World's Greatest Detective. It's certainly not a superpower, but it does make him stand out. And just to kind of give you an idea, there are superheroes that will represent various characters in the DCU as well. And let's see if I can find a location in here rather quickly. There's one. And then there are location cards. Most cards, like most deck building games, once they're played, they're gone. All locations have a special keyword, ongoing. That means they're going to stay in play. And they're going to do so until something makes them leave. Now, it's worth noting that several cards have that wording on them. They'll say ongoing, but it's common to every location. Now, on a player's turn, he will have a hand of 5 cards, and you start the game with 5 cards in your hand. You take those 5 cards, and you're going to add up the power that's in your hand. That's going to make for an awesome first turn and a really bad second turn, because I know that there are vulnerabilities in this deck, too. So 5 punches, each giving me 1 power, but no victory points. That's the little star in the bottom left corner. These are going to let me buy more cards out of the lineup. So, as a for instance, I might want defense, because you can get attacked in this game. Attacks are abilities that happen once a card with the attack goes into play. So, let's say, as a for instance, I were to play the Black Lantern Green Arrow, then his attack ability would hit every player simultaneously at that moment, unless it says otherwise. Defense cards can be played on anyone's turn to stop an attack, and you simply fulfill the conditions of the card after the defense keyword. Well, I would probably want some defense, and I have 5 power, so I would take Super Speed, which would cost me 3, and I would take the Lasso of Truth, which would cost me 2. So that's my 5 power. take those cards and all the cards I've played this turn. They're going to go into my discard pile. At the end of the turn, I will draw my next 5 cards, and then I will refill the lineup. Now, the cost of the card, which you see here in the bottom right, also appears on our supervillains. Once you have enough power, instead of buying a card out of the lineup, and we're just going to assume here for the moment that I have 8 power in my hand a little later on in the game, you can fight the supervillain. If you notice, some supervillains like Solomon Grundy will have an ability that says stack ongoing. That means as long as they're on top of the supervillain stack, that ability happens. But let's say I beat Solomon Grundy. Well, now Solomon Grundy is in my discard pile. At the end of my turn, once I have drawn my new set of cards, I have refilled the lineup, then I would flip the top card of the supervillain stack over. Ooh, that's a nasty one. Parallax. Okay. So when an ability comes up, when the new supervillain pops up, he will have a first appearance attack. That is an attack that will happen immediately against all players from the supervillain himself, but it only happens the very first time he's revealed. If something would force him off the stack and then put him back, it doesn't happen again. If he were to somehow wind up in the lineup, it wouldn't happen again. It's going to happen just on the very first time he's revealed. Game continues like this until every supervillain has been defeated, or superheroes in some cases, and once they have all been beaten, the game is over. The player with the most victory points wins. That's DC in a nutshell. Alright, so we've seen how to play the DC deck building game sort of in a nutshell there, and now we're going to take a look at each of the 4 basic sets. Now, it's worth noting that the crossover expansions, which are little small mini expansions, currently there have been 4 of them: the Justice Society of America, the Legion of Superheroes, the Arrow television series, and the Watchmen expansion. We're actually going to do each of those as their own standalone episode of Rage Quit Radio, more than likely. Or they may all wind up bashed in one episode. We're not sure yet, but we'll cover each of those individually because those are each uniquely themed. They each have new mechanics or new twists that they will add to the game on their own, and so they're worthy of sort of individual reviews, plus they're not that hard to break down and do individually, whereas the base sets, the way I have everything mixed together, would prove a little more difficult. So, what we're going to look at here, the base sets, we'll start with the original one. This is the original DC deck building game. Now, this one features the Justice League as its main characters. Very cool game. It sets everything up. I find it to be one of the more balanced of the expansions, or I guess in this case base sets, which are, like we said, there's 4 of them. So I would consider this to be the ideal jumping on point. Any of the 4 can serve that purpose, but this one really does handle that very well. It gives you a chance to get a good hold on the mechanics. All 7 superheroes that come in the base set, and each set comes with 7 heroes base. If you're able to get a first run of them, you'll get a promo hero, an 8th hero for each base set. But for this one, they're all very unique. They're all very different. They all have a very good feel to them, and they're all fairly powerful. Every person will find the one that they like the most, I'm sure, but all the variable player powers work very well, and very seldom do they step on each other's toes. So I would call this one probably the most balanced of the 4, and probably the ideal jumping on point. Then you have Heroes Unite. Now, Heroes Unite, frankly to me, is the weakest of the 4. This one does not add anything really new or earth-shattering to the game in way of mechanics or ideas. The theme for this one, it's still the DC universe, so I guess that's the overarching theme, but the first set was the Justice League of America. This set is basically the ragtag group of heroes that we had left over. This set includes characters like Captain Marvel, Hawkman, Booster Gold. Yes, that's right, I call him Captain Marvel. The DC Universe calls him Shazam, but anyway, old habits. So, heroes like this, Nightwing, and Batgirl, and so on. And It is a very fun set. It is very cool. The one thing that this set adds that was a little divisive among players is an instant win mechanic. There is a way to instantly win the game with the Heroes Unite expansion through the Kyle Rayner card. This set adds the individual Green Lantern rings, or in this case the various Lantern Corps rings, from Blackest Night. So you would have red, yellow, orange, blue, indigo, violet, and green. So this one has 7 unique power rings in it, 1 for each of the core, plus Kyle Rayner, who says if you play him and 3 different power rings in 1 turn, you win. So it was a little divisive for that reason. But I have personally found that the Kyle Rayner win condition happens rare, if ever. So it's almost a non-factor, especially if you do mix it in with the other sets. Then it becomes extraordinarily rare. But to me, as I said, nothing new, nothing earth-shattering, and frankly, the weakest assortment of characters out of the lot. So this one, to me, dead last. Then we get to Forever Evil. Now, there is something kind of intrinsically cool about being the bad guy. And this one is essentially the Injustice League. This is the who's who of the villains. The only one that I would say they were remiss in not including is there's no Joker. The Joker was kind of reserved as a promo for a convention. We get Harley Quinn, which is really awesome, but the Joker's missing. But you do get characters like Bizarro and Lex Luthor and Sinestro and Captain Cold and Black Manta and some others. So a lot of fun, this one. This one does add a new mechanic, and that is victory point tokens. There are a number of cards in this set that will actually give you victory points that can't be stripped away. Basically, the card that generated these points, that gives you these points, isn't going to go, if you lose that card, you don't lose the points that you gained. Very unique, but there are also ways to steal those victory points. This game also seems to focus a little more on attacks, a little more ruthless than some of the other DC sets. I would probably say that this is arguably the most advanced of the DC sets for what it adds, and it adds a lot to the game, in my opinion. The victory point tokens, more attacks, more defense, more player interaction. So this one, I would put it number 2 behind the original base set as far as ones that I like, and then I would also probably say that this is the most advanced of the 4. Then we get to the Teen Titans. So this is the latest of the 4 DC deck building game base sets, and with the Teen Titans, we go back to something that made the original set very good and very captivating, and that is it is built around a united concept. One team, in this case, the Teen Titans, and they're all here. It's a mix-mash of the iconic characters that the mainstream would know from the Cartoon Network series as Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go, mixed in with the characters from the DC comic books. And that's something that the DC deck building game thus far is doing very well. They're not isolating themselves to simply one era of comic books or one era of DC media. They're going through and they're covering a lot of different things. We talked about that on an episode of Rage Quit Radio when we talked about the Batman miniatures game that Night Models makes. They're doing the same thing. They're not isolating themselves to one type of media for this very rich universe. So, the Teen Titans set also adds something new to the game. The Teen Titans set adds a focus on ongoing cards. The idea of building up your strategy this turn so that you can have an incredible turn down the road. The idea that you will have several different cards in play simultaneously that will allow you to, somewhere down the road, have the uber turn. So, great idea. Certainly adds a lot of new strategies, a lot of new wrinkles. Again, an iconic team, while not the iconic characters that are in the original base set, Teen Titans, is an iconic team. And so it does have that one united theme going for it, which I really appreciate. As a result, this is, when it came out, became my second favorite set ever. So, to kind of give you an in order here, the top 4, as I fumble around with the rule books. So, if you're only going to buy one, and I don't know why you wouldn't buy them all, but if you're only going to buy one, buy this one. Buy the original base set. It's the Justice League. It's Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, Cyborg, and if you get the first edition, Martian Manhunter. So you get the who's who, so to speak, of the DC universe in that one set. You touch on all the big ones. Now, if you want to expand elsewhere, number 2, I would get Teen Titans. Teen Titans adds more complex gameplay. It's another united team because of the way the Justice League and the Teen Titans have always kind of been interlocked. The Teen Titans are in many ways the junior Justice League. You have Superman in the Justice League, you have Superboy in Teen Titans. You have Batman in the Justice League, you have Robin in the Teen Titans, or in this case, Red Robin. You have Wonder Woman, you have Wonder Girl. You get the idea, so on and so forth. So it's a wonderful idea. These two would complement each other and do complement each other very, very well, not only in theme but in play. If you're going to get a third one, that's when you pick up Forever Evil and you start to get to play with the iconic bad guys. Forever Evil, again, new mechanic, new gameplay, very good. Add something new to the dynamic, and the idea of having superheroes that you would then take on as though they were supervillains in a normal game of DC is outstanding, because a lot of heroes over the years have gone a little sideways, and this is your chance to kind of replicate that. And then, if you've got the other 3, that's when I would pick up Heroes Unite. Heroes Unite is basically rounding out the hero roster. It does add all the Green Lantern rings, so if you want to do what I did and you want to have a custom Green Lantern main deck, then you're definitely going to need this expansion. But it's not a necessity if you just want to kick back, relax, and play a little DC deck builder. So, final thoughts. It's an awesome game. I love it. It is without a doubt my favorite deck building game. It is our go-to game here at the Brown house whenever it rolls around for game day. Always somebody wants to pull out and play a little game of DC. And the idea of having a custom main deck works pretty well and pretty easily. You can theme it really, really well. Maybe we'll go over that in a future video. Some people want to see how at least I've put together some of my custom main decks. I've got 4 of them at the moment that are themed around different time frames or different story elements of the DC universe. So, I hope that this very first Rage Quit review has served you well. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, of course, share, like, subscribe. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of this freshman experiment, whether or not it worked or didn't work. And until next time, visit the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/RQR Podcast. And we're on Twitter now, @ECS Podcast. So come check us out. Until next time, I'm Mike Brown. We'll see you at the table.